Okay, this is your guy's guy, Robert Manni, coming to you live from Asbury Park, announcing a brand new Guys Radio, premiering Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Pacific Time on KCAA Radio in sunny Southern California. 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. We've got a great show. We've got a twofer. We've got two guys on Guys Radio. First, we've got Paco Chierici. He's written a book about his life as a fighter pilot, and he's got a great novel he's going to talk to. We've also got a musician for the first time on the show. We've got Tom Nelson, who is the creative force behind the Americana band Heathcote Hill. He's going to join us, and we're going to listen to some music on Guys Radio. So I hope you can join us. We're on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all over the internet. You can download and stream whenever you want. Thanks for your support.
It's Guys Radio. Here's your host, Robert Manni.
And welcome to Guys Radio. This is your host, Robert Manni, welcoming you to the show where men and women can be at their best. Everyone wins. Guys Radio. Speaking of guys, we've got two of them for you today. We're going to do, the show's a little bit different this week. We've got a fighter pilot who's a writer and a novelist on the show. His name is Paco Chierici. And he's written a book, a very cool book, called Lions of the Sky. It's kind of a Top Gun for the new millennium. And he's a very cool guy. He's a fighter pilot's pilot. And he's going to take us through what it's like to be a fighter pilot, and also what it's like to be a fighter pilot who's written a novel and what goes into his book. Very cool guy, a real guy's guy. This guy's a man's man. And thank you, Paco, for your service before we even get you on the show. So we've got Paco, and then we're going to do something a little bit different. We've got another guy's guy on the show. We've got Tom Nelson. Tom Nelson is what I would call the kind of creative director, if you will, and the driving force behind the band Heathcote Hill. And they're an East Coast band. They're up in Westchester County, New York. And they are kind of an up-and-coming Americana, I would call them, type band. It's kind of like boomer rock, but it's really nice. Tom's a great musician. He writes the songs. They've got a terrific singer. And we're going to feature two of the cuts on the show. So we haven't had a musical guest on Guys Radio yet, so it's another first for us. So I can't wait to get started. I hope everybody's had a fantastic summer. It was beautiful in the Northeast, but you know, our summers in the Northeast are a little bit different there. When it's hot, it's hot. And when it's humid, it's humid. Usually they're hot and humid. But at least we didn't get a lot of rain. We got some early in the summer, but then it kind of evened out. And we had a real kind of August with a lot of those long summer dog days in August and rounding into September, where September weather in New York City in particular is gorgeous. And also down the Jersey Shore, places like that. I've mentioned many times my relocation to Southern California. All systems go. Everything's locked and loaded. My wife, at this time of this show's broadcast, my wife and my son will be happily ensconced in San Diego, where we're going to start out, and we're going to take it from there. So fantastic. Guys Radio, KCAA, every Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Pacific time. So we're going to get into it. We're going to get to our guests right away. Okay, Guys Radio, as I mentioned, we have a very special guest today. His name is Paco Chierici, and he is a pilot. And with all of the buzz about the upcoming Top Gun sequel, I think he's got the perfect book for everybody to read, which gives you a real insider's look, not a Hollywood insider's look, but a real insider's look called Lions of the Sky, about what it's like to fly in the Air Force. Let me tell you a little bit about Paco. His name is Francesco, but they call him Paco. He's the author of Lions in the Sky. During his active career in the Navy, he flew A-6E Intruders and F-14A Tomcats. He was deployed to conflict zones from Somalia to Iraq stationed aboard carriers during including the USS Ranger, Nimitz, and the Kitty Hawk. Unable to give up dogfighting, he flew the F-5 Tiger II for another 10 years as a bandit, concurrent with his employment as a commercial pilot. That's a lot there. Throughout his military career, he accumulated nearly 3,000 tactical hours, 400 carrier landings, and a Southwest Asia Service Medal with Bronze Star and 3 Strike Flight Air Medals. His writing has appeared in Aviation Classics magazine all over the place. He's created and produced an award-winning naval aviation documentary called Speed and Angels. He's currently a 737 captain, and he can also often be found in the skies above California, where we're listening right now, in a Yak 50 with a group of like-minded G-hounds to get his dogfighting fix. So welcome to Guys Radio. Paco Chierici. And thank you so much for being on the show. Well, you're a real, somebody first of all, thank you for your service. And secondly, how did you get inspired to fly planes when you were a kid? I assume it began.
It didn't start for me when I was a kid. I think as most kids do, I built the models and was enamored with fighter planes when I was really young. But then it kind of faded into the background until I went to college. And I was in the Navy ROTC. And aviation is one of the 4 major choices you can get. Mm-hmm. And I got a backseat ride in an F-14 the summer of my sophomore year. And that was it, man. It set the hook forever. I was infected just like a virus.
Wow.
And really, really turned it on for me. That was clearly what I wanted to do.
Anybody else in your family, or this was just you?
Just me. I mean, my dad did 2 years between Korea and Vietnam in the Army, but really I was the only one that ever flew, and I was the only one that really had a career in the military.
Mm-hmm. And how long did it take you to get the training to actually make your first solo flight in any type of airplane?
Well, I'll tell you what, in the military, it's my belief that anybody can learn how to fly, but to learn how to fly in the military, you have to be quick. And mm-hmm. from the time you finish all the academic portion, which is, I don't know, a month to 6 weeks between just the grinding out of the studying and the simulators, and you actually sit in a real airplane for the first time, it's only about 2 weeks. It's super fast, yeah. And you learn how to fly in 3 phases in the Navy. There's primary, intermediate, and advanced, and each one is roughly 6 months long. So in about 18 months, you are a winged naval aviator, and you're off to learn how to fly the plane that you're going to be flying in the fleet.
Now, does everybody make it through the training, or does some people say, this is not what I expected, it's not for me, or they just can't cut it?
No, definitely not everybody makes it through the training, and there's a number of weed out stages. It's so expensive these days that they try to weed most of the people out before they ever get to an airplane. Mm-hmm. And I think they're fairly successful at that, more successful than they were when I was flying. A lot of people, we lost probably 10 to 15, maybe 20% of our class from when we started to the winging ceremony.
How do they weed them out? What are the criteria that kind of, does the winnowing, if you will?
Well, I mean, there's a variety of different things. We start off with academics. First of all, like I said earlier, everything is really fast-paced. It's a mm-hmm. fire hose. Okay. And as soon as you're comfortable doing one phase of flying, like say formation flying, you'll do 5 flights of formation flying, and then boom, you're off to the next stage, which is bombing mm-hmm. or strafing or something like that. It's just enough to get you to the point where you believe you'll be able to do it someday with some sort of proficiency, mm-hmm. and they cut you off at the knees and throw something new at you.
Got it.
And so there's a variety of different things that I would say the second biggest thing is, in the Navy, we land on aircraft carriers, and you could be the best fighter pilot in the world, but if you can't land on a ship, then you're no good to the Navy as a fighter pilot.
Okay.
So, that's a huge weed out mm-hmm. stage there, and that's the final exam in intermediate, advanced, and once you get to your fleet aircraft, the last thing you really do is go land on a ship day and night.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are the core qualities that someone has to have to get through the program and to be a successful pilot in the military?
That's a great question. I served for 20 years, and there was such a huge variety of people and backgrounds and characteristics and personality types. I mean, everybody's got sort of a type A personality. But I think the most important thing is that you really have to want it. There's no such thing as an accidental fighter pilot. You really have to want to make it work. You have to have the right attitude, and everybody that shows up is motivated. They're intelligent. They've got a strong academic background, but the wickets that you have to jump through, the sort of the death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's so extreme that it has to be that thing that you want more than anything else.
Got it.
So just the drive and determination.
Okay. One more question just about the technical aspects of your training, because I think, on Guys Radio, one of the things we try to do is we bring out information for people. And then they can determine, hey, this is for me, or I didn't know about that, but that's the service. And what I like to do, Paco, is I like to ask the questions. If I was listening, I was driving in my car, I'd say, ask him that. And I'm really curious about what you do. So I hope you don't mind asking some technical questions about the work you've done. So let me ask you this.
Not at all.
Tell us about the different types of planes that you've flown. You've got the A6E Intruder, the F-14A Tomcat, the F-5 Tiger II, Yak 50 that you're now, and then the commercial, the 737s. Tell us a little bit about the difference in the experience in flying these types of craft.
Sure. I consider myself to be really, really fortunate in that I get to do what I love, as my profession, and also as a recreation, flying the Yak 50. Just to go through the aircraft that you mentioned, the A6E Intruder was a Vietnam-era, low-level, all-weather medium attack bomber. And at the time, it carried but it was second only to the B-52 in terms of the number of bombs that it carried. So it was a workhorse, and it flew through the mountains and valleys day and night using this terrain-following radar to bring ordnance to the target. And that was the job of the A6. Super fun. It was crazy dangerous. There was a lot of tight-knit camaraderie and loyalty to the community. Unfortunately, the plane kind of aged out, with technology, both on the enemy side and our side, it became a little bit antiquated, so it went away. And I was fortunate in that I got to transition over to the F-14. The F-14 was born as an air-to-air superiority and interceptor. So its initial job was to launch long-range strikes to protect the fleet against Soviet bombers. So it was super fast. It had a really good range, and it carried this missile called the AIM-54 Phoenix, which was designed to shoot, extreme long-range missiles to protect the aircraft carrier and the strike group from Soviet bombers. In my career, it morphed into a very capable dogfighter, which is a different beast than an air superiority fighter. And it also turned into an incredibly effective platform for air-to-ground delivery of bombs, laser-guided bombs specifically. So it was able to adapt to the times as the times changed. Until the point where about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, in 2006, it became obsolete as well, just the cost of maintenance on the aircraft.
Right. So Paco, how does this different than when you're flying a 737? What's the main difference between the military craft? Is it one like you're driving a bus that's going in slow motion, and the other you're in a Maserati going 120 miles an hour?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, like I tell people, I went from being a Formula One, race car driver to a bus driver, which is fine. You can't drive Formula One cars your whole life, but that's exactly right. I mean, I was in the sports car, going with my hair on fire, and now I'm, my passengers, if they feel like they're in their living room, going from A to B, then I've got my job.
Right. Got it. Okay, let's get into the book. I mean, to me, it's fascinating. First of all, your life story, I'm sure, is fascinating. But the fact that you became a novelist, and I went through the book. I haven't read the whole thing, but I read some passages, and I got to tell you, very well written. You've got a good storyline. The main character, the name of the book again is Lions of the Sky. Paco Chierici. Chierici as the author, and Sam Richardson as the fighter pilot's pilot. He's a reluctant legend with a gut-eating secret. He's in the last span of his tour as an instructor, yearning to get back to real action of the fleet when he's ordered to take one last class, a class that will force him to confront his carefully quarantined demons. So I love that. And then he's got an antagonist, I guess, if you will, Keely Silvers, and it's a woman, and she's brash, carefree, naturally gifted, and her and her classmates are kind of wild and ragged. So, and of course, they're going to go to a very dangerous zone, as you would expect, and in this case, it's the South China Sea. So what I'd like to know, Paco, is what inspired you to write a novel, and why did you pick this story and then the setting of the South China Sea?
Sure. I've been a writer my whole life, and writing a novel has always been an aspiration for me, and being a novelist is something that I really wanted to accomplish. Ideally, this is the first of many books in this series. In fact, I'm about halfway through the second novel, the sequel. And then the story, this story, Lines of the Sky, it's sort of the introduction to the world of naval aviation. And that the best way I thought I could tell that is, as you mentioned, Slammer, the lead character, is an instructor pilot, and he's kind of that classic hard-boiled guy who's he's had enough of dealing with the students, and he wants to go. He sees that there's some trouble brewing in the South China Sea, and he wants to go out and be in the thick of the action. And he's miffed that he's got to deal with a class of students, one last class, and of course he's got a little bit of an issue with women in the cockpit, female fighter pilots, and this class has two women in it, Keely Silvers, and there's another character, Dusty Rhodes, and they challenge his beliefs and his preconceived notions, right, to the point where he's really got to come to terms with them. And the South China Sea is a real life situation that's brewing right now. The Chinese government is taking over this very, very strategic and valuable portion of the ocean, and they're putting military bases on these islands that previously had belonged to no one. They were in international waters, and they've claimed them as their own. And so I've always believed that was that's a really natural setting for a flashpoint. And as the kids go through training, and as Slammer is dealing with all these issues, and there's all the inherent drama of flying jets, dropping bombs, and dogfighting, and all that stuff that they've got to learn. There's a constant drumbeat in the background of this character, this commando, who's taking out assets from the nations that border the South China Sea, the Philippines, Vietnam, Brunei, just to name a few. And he's taking out their assets, and it's very clearly leading back to the Chinese. And so you can kind of see that there's this underlying tension that's building up towards the climactic battle sequence in the book. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I was going to say that that particular situation in the world is very real, and I just wanted to make it as authentic as possible. To make the action and the setup as authentic as possible to really draw the reader in.
Okay. Now, you mentioned in the book it's kind of like that some of the pilots it's almost like this new class with Keely. It's like toys, the expensive toys they're flying around. And it's interesting because I was talking to a friend of mine, and his brother's a Navy SEAL, and he was talking about what's going on in this was a few years ago in the Middle East, and he said, some of the guys in the military, and forgive me and tell me if I'm wrong, they love to get out there and test out the new equipment, and they're having some fun with it. Of course, lives are on the line and all that, but they love taking this stuff out there and working with it. Is that the same sentiment that a lot of folks feel who are in the military? Like they love flying these planes and they love, shooting at stuff, and it's not to kill people, but of course that happens, but just, playing with the machinery itself. Is there a thrill aspect of that also?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
I mean, it is.
I was trying to be respectful.
The thrill of life. No, I understand, but it's it is every young boy's dream, and some young women as well, to go out and fly these unbelievable fighter planes. and dropping bombs and shooting guns and missiles, it's super fun. I mean, it's why we do it.
All right.
We don't really do it to go out and kill people. That's not the thing that drives us. But I got to tell you, man, it is a rush. It's a rush dropping a 1,000-pound bomb, and we mostly bomb targets that are on practice ranges. And you look back behind you and you see this huge explosion go off. It's awesome.
How about, have you let me throw you a couple of curveballs here if you don't mind. UFOs. What's the word amongst your pilot buddies and yourself? And you ever see anything out there?
I have not, but one of the articles that I wrote a few years ago deals with a good friend of mine, and this has now become a very famous incident, but it's called the Nimitz incident in 2004. A really close friend of mine, Dave Fravor.
Okay, I've read about that.
Yeah, so I wrote that. I broke that story, I think, in 2015. The article, if you want to Google it, is called "There I Was: The X-Files Edition." So if you just Google that, it'll pull it up. You have to put all of that in there. But it was the first article because I had heard the story from Dave Fravor for years. It was a great story to tell in a bar after a few drinks. You're like, come on, Dave, tell that story about the UFO. So I became the editor of this online magazine, and I one of the first articles that I wanted to write was this story about Dave's encounter with UFOs. And so it was he and his wingman and their two backseaters. So there's 4 people that saw this thing, and I detail that in the article. And then the ship that was accompanying the aircraft carrier is a special type of ship that has this very sophisticated radar, and they also were seeing these objects flying around and vectoring the fighters towards them. So I've never seen anything personally. In fact, I had never really thought much about it. But this guy, he was the commanding officer of that fighter squadron, and he and his wingman and their 2 backseaters saw this object. And in fact, Dave has the distinction of being the only pilot in history, in recorded history anyway, that was involved in like a dogfight basically with this UFO.
Wow.
He was trying to join on it, and it was trying to dodge him, and he forced it to maneuver in a way that it exited the area at a high velocity. Pretty thrilling.
That's so cool. What do you think, and what do your fellow members of the military think of actually what is the greatest existential threat to the United States right now globally? Is it China? Is it South China Sea? Is it Russia? Is it Al Qaeda? What is it? Because we get, people watch TV and they read it. We're fed what we're supposed to think about. We really don't know. We're not on the ground out there or in the air like you.
Sure. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because the federal government is interested in this whole UFO thing, not because they care about UFOs, but because whatever it was that was flying around out there, the ship could barely pull it up on radar. None of the fighter planes could pull it up on radar. So their concern was the threat to the fleet. That was the direction they took for their investigation. When it comes to strictly terrestrial concerns, I don't think Russia is much of a concern. They've got a pretty weak military. There's a few things that they fly or field out there, like surface air missiles that are sophisticated, but they don't have it in great numbers. And they're not super offensive. They're an irritant. The Chinese, on the other hand, are, I think, very ambitious to the point of being, it looks like they're trying to empire build. And the South China Sea is a great example of that. But there's some other examples of that throughout the world. They've really taken a sort of offensive strategy to expand their reach and to build up their military in a very short amount of time. They're building ships like crazy. They've got 1 aircraft carrier now, and they're building, I think, a total of 4. So they have a huge ambition, and I think they're probably our biggest concern. Countries or institutions like Al Qaeda or ISIS, they're not a threat to the United States in terms of the integrity of our country. They're a threat to our peace of mind. They're terrorist organizations, so by definition, they cause terror and discomfort in the populace. I don't think in the U.S. Itself, within our borders, they will be a huge issue. But we're a country that survives on trade. We
Right.
have assets of our country that are all over the world, and those are vulnerable to Al Qaeda. We can't protect everything and the planet from the reach of a terrorist organization. So I don't know. I think it remains to be seen how much damage they can do to the country itself and the trade that we live by.
Okay. All right. Guys Radio, your host, Robert Manni. I'm here with a real guy in real life. His name is Paco Chierici, and he's written this fantastic book, Lions of the Sky. Last question for you, Paco. The Top Gun and the Top Gun sequel. Actually, the Top Gun sequel, the plot seems right out of your book, frankly. Do you find, and other guys and gals in the military find that that's realistic, or is it like way unrealistic?
I don't know too much about the sequel, but the first one was not, it's pure Hollywood.
Sure.
It's fun. We kind of loved it, especially people from my generation who grew up with Top Gun. But it's not realistic. That's not the way we do business in the Navy. The flying sequences are great, and they're super fun to watch, and they obviously set to music. That's all awesome, but it's not realistic. I wouldn't use that phrase at all.
Okay.
Now the sequel, maybe I've got two really good friends that are working on with the Navy as liaisons to the production company, and they tell me they can't tell me anything specific about the film, but they say that they think it's going to be pretty good. They're excited. Cool. So I think they're going to tighten it up a little bit.
All right, great. Okay, so where can people find more about you, Paco, and your book? Lions of the Sky, Paco Chierici. Tell us.
Yeah. So lionsofthesky.com is, you can, all the stuff about myself, my career, the book, documentary I produced called Speed and Angels. It's all available on lionsofthesky.com. And the book itself is available on Amazon. It's available on other outlets as well, but all the versions of it, the audio, the paperback, the hardback, they're all available on Amazon.com.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Paco, great talks, fascinating. Forgive me for mangling your name a couple of times. And really, thank you for your service. And I hope everybody goes out there and picks up this book, Lions of the Sky, Paco Chierici on Guys Radio.
Robert Manni's The Guy's Guide to Love is a fast-paced tale of flawed men and savvy women competing for love, sex, power, and money in the city where they play for keeps. It's the men's successor to Sex and the City. The Guy's Guide to Love is a sexy romp through the fast-moving, high-stakes world of Madison Avenue. Available now on Amazon and wherever books are sold.
All right, we're back on Guys Radio, and as I mentioned, we've got a special treat today. We're going to do some music. We haven't done live music in terms of playing tracks and having a live music guest who's a member of a band, and it's something I wanted to add to the whole Guys brand, if you will, because it's all about when men and women can be at their best, everyone wins. So this is going to be an example of somebody that actually I know from my career in advertising, a gentleman by the name of Tom Nelson. Great guy, great creative. I was president of Gardner Nelson Advertising and also creative chairman of Ammirati Puris Lintas when I was there. And he has kind of moved his career, evolved as I have. And he's in the music area and he plays the guitar and he's got a band called Heathcote Hill. So let me tell you a little bit about them and then I'll bring Tom on. Their music has been described as sumptuous Americana that ticks boxes relating to melody, infectiousness, earwormery, I love that, and much, much more besides, says Dave Franklin, dancing about architecture. Heathcote Hill, they came together in 2016 to record a CD called Reinforcements. They did a follow-up last November, Everlasting. It's got extensive airplay on AAA radio stations and was playlisted by many leading Americana tastemakers, including Artie Martello, Barry Costier, and Wildman Steve. They have a great vocalist. Her name is Megan Porcaro Herspring, and she's been compared to, and I think you'll agree when you hear their tracks I'm going to play, Susan Tedeschi or Natalie Merchant. And my special guest is the lead guitar player, and he does so much for the band. He's really Heathcote Hill. So let me bring him on to Guys Guys Radio, our very first musical guest on KCAA, Tom Nelson from Heathcote Hill. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for being here. When you started Heathcote Hill, what was your inspiration, and what was kind of your vision for putting the band together, and how did you put it together?
I had stepped away from owning an ad agency. My partner and I sold our company, and I wanted to do something creative with the last third of my life. And I thought to go from advertising, writing, and directing to writing some songs. I played songs since I was a kid. My brothers and I all write and record music, and I decided to throw my hat in the ring, asked some friends to help me, and we recorded our first album, Reinforcements.
Fantastic. Well, it's very nice. I didn't know when I was meeting with Tom a couple of weeks ago to discuss having him on the show, and I'm like, Tom, it's kind of like, to me, it's like kind of like boomer rock. I really like it, but I didn't know how they developed the different genres in music now, and it's in the Americana area, and I think you're really going to like it because great music is great music. And we're not using auto-tune here. We're not using a lot of synthesizers. We're not using a whole bunch of production stuff. This is music, and I think you're really going to dig it. So how would you describe your music, Tom? I know I had to put it in a box, and the industry has to give it a genre, but how would you describe your music and what Heathcote Hill does?
Our genre is all over the place. We don't fit neatly into anything. I think that's because our singer is a really talented 40-something, and I'm a aspiring guitar player at 60-something, and we cross a lot of generations, and we cross a lot of different things. There's rock, there's folk, there's a little indie, and Americana seems to be the new catch-all thing for a little bit of blues, a little bit of country, a little bit of rock, but it's not Sammy Hagar, and it's not Joan Baez. It's kind of like, I think it's kind of a catch-all for a catch-all genre, which is us.
Now, just for the benefit of our listeners who are not familiar with Heathcote Hill, or may not be from the East Coast or from the kind of northeastern area, what is Heathcote Hill, and what's the significance for your band?
I live on Heathcote Hill in Mamaroneck, New York. It was sold by the native Indians in the late 1600s, and it ended up being a big piece of property being owned by an English gentleman named Heathcote. He owned everything back to Scarsdale, and that was his country estate. He ended up being a mayor of New York, and his family became incredibly rich, and the town of Mamaroneck sprung up around their big house on the hill, Heathcote Hill.
Great. Okay, so let's, why don't we do this? Let's play the first track that you brought along. We're going to play two. And the first one is called, it's a very tasty track. It's called Save the Ones You Love. And I believe it is from your, the Save the Ones You Love is a 5-song EP. So we're going to play it right now.
Tell me what it means. Everywhere I go, trouble and hopes and dreams, and I don't really know if dreams will see us through. Dreams can't all come true, so please be careful who you trust. It's a wicked world. Save the ones you love. Oh, if you listen to your heart, it says take a chance, but that's the hardest part. 'Cause you can take it back, and life goes rushing by. No time to wonder why the price is always I can hear the wind whistling in the trees, and I can see the moon shining up above, shining down on all of us as if to wish us luck. And oh, save the ones you love. Good intentions aren't enough, the cost is only going up. And oh, save the ones you love. Save them just because someday we'll need them to save us. It's a wicked world. Save the ones you love.
All right, that was a tasty track, Save the Ones You Love. Tell us a little bit about the songs, Tom. How did it come about? How did you write it? And then start with that.
What I like about this song, Robert, is that it's kind of open. I wanted to write a piece that was open to how you thought about it, and for you to supply the definition of who do you love and how far would you go to protect them or keep them. And what's interesting to me about this song is if you have a very narrow definition of the ones you love, you have a very selfish place. But if you have an expansive view of the people that you love and support, it's an expansive idea. So what I liked about this song is it's very how the listener feels is what the song means to them. Who is it that you love and how far would you go to save them?
Got it. Now, you wrote the lyrics and the melody for this one?
That's right.
Okay. Now, tell us a little bit about your writing process. I mean, how do you come up with ideas? Where do you go when you're going to write? It's like, I've always read, Keith Richards, who's one of my favorites. He said, I don't write the songs. I have the antenna up. And he must have a really twisted antenna anyhow, being Keith Richards. But it's like incoming, and then he'll run to his studio and he'll lay down a track. Or the old story when he did Satisfaction, he was sleeping and he woke up and he played the riff, and then he went back to sleep and the recorder was on and it was snoring for a half hour worth of snoring, and then it was dun dun da 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 da. How do you work, Tom?
I would say very similar. Because I spent most of my career as a writer, words come very easily to me and melodies don't. I tend to keep playing something till I have a melody I like and then fit words to the melody.
Okay, so you don't have a phrase or a hook or something and you say something like save the ones you love, and then you go do it. You have a melody, and then you'll find like, okay, what is this saying to me? Or do you fit the two? Do you mesh the two?
I try to fit the two because melodies tend to have a point of view, like if they're beautiful or insistent or clever, and then you try to fit words that make it feel like that. And I write down phrases, and I came up with the phrase somewhere, save the ones you love, and I thought that sounded neat. One step today is then I Googled it. There's one record from before the turn of the century by another band with that name, but it's very few. There are no other records that I could find, so it's a relatively unique phrase. And it started to fit with a melody that I had been working on, and you kind of bolt them together. It is very similar to your Keith Richards idea. You put up your antenna, you grab a bit, you put it in, and you start seeing if you can build a song out of that. Can you make the lyric go somewhere? Can you make the melody go somewhere?
Do you find that some songs kind of write themselves, and you're there for like a couple hours and you've got it, and others there's a piece there and you lay down a track and then you go away and then you have to come back to it, and then the song changes when you change a rhythm or you're playing around in the studio? What's your experience like in terms of crafting a song?
Any and all of those. We're in the studio today working on a riff idea that I had 4 years ago, and it's taken me this long to turn it into a song that sounds pretty promising. 4 years ago, it was just a fragment. And
Got it.
You kind of build on it and see if it can go somewhere. And then I think you have to step back and say, is it working or not? It becomes its own thing that you're building, not unlike building the foundation to a house and then putting doors on and putting windows and saying that would look good with a really good thing on the roof. You know,
do you ever,
similar.
Do you ever, Tom, you ever have like a bits of a song and you lay it down there and you maybe get stuck or a little bit, you're not sure, and do you play it for the band and say, what do you guys think? And get some input there from either Megan or the rest of the team?
Try to, but I try not to take them things until I'm happy with it. Mm-hmm. There are very similar, like back when we used to work together. You want to come into the room with your partners.
Right.
With, here's my idea. I've pushed it as far as I can go. How can you help me push it further? If you take it in too unbaked, it can spin out of control, or people, I don't know. Part of it's, I think it's my job to supply something that's working so people can say yes or no to
Got it. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you folks a little bit about my relationship with Tom and what type of guy he is. Again, this is Robert Manni, Guys Radio, as Tom knows me as Bob. And we're on KCAA. Tom Nelson of Heathcote Hill is my guest. When I was back in advertising, I had switched jobs from one agency to another. I had worked on Stolichnaya, the launch of all of the Stoli flavors. It was a huge success. And I rode that and also Bombay Sapphire Gin. And that was a huge success also. And I came to an agency called Emirati Puris Lintas, and I was assigned to Bacardi. And at the time, Bacardi was kind of a fun vacation drink. And smartly, the client wanted us to, really transcend that. And I was working with I was the account guy, and I was working with some of the creatives, and we were really striking out because the notion of bats, because there's bats on the Bacardi bottle, was being tossed around. And I thought that the whole idea of bats wasn't people hanging upside down in bars. It was really the bat device that we see that's so prominent now on the bottles. And I got into it with the team that had been assigned. And Tom was one of the creative chairmen with his partner. And I had to go see them. And it was a come to Jesus, if you will, meeting for me. And I figured, you know what? If I don't do something, I'm going to lose my job. So I better just lay it on the line. And the creatives had their say, and I had my say. And I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. And Tom and his partner, a fantastic guy, they said, you know what? The account guy's right. We need to, strategically, we need to go in that direction. Now, I didn't have the idea, but I knew the path we needed to take. And that's the type of creative Tom is. And we ended up with kind of one of the breakthrough campaigns of all time, which was Bacardi by Night. So Tom is a creative's creative. And he's also a pleasure to work with as an individual. So that's why I'm so glad he's on the show, and I'm so glad that Heathcote Hill is doing such a great job. Sorry for that. I had to tell that story, Tom. I apologize because it's important. You were
the key to breaking it out. Everybody was trying, back in that day, people were trying to do dumb things with Bacardi on the beach with umbrellas, right. And the bat idea was, well, no, bats come out at night, and that's when it's fun, and that's how that was what got us to Bacardi at night, which revved up that brand.
And I was the new guy, and you were the creative chairman. I'm like, and Mark Johnson was your partner, and you guys were very cool about the whole thing, and it saved my butt, and I ended up getting promoted out of it. And so thank you. So when you're playing guitar, what type of guitar do you play? Is it a Les Paul? And then do you like to play the acoustic when you're writing, or your electric guitar? And do you like to fill in with acoustic to add some space to the music?
I have 17 guitars. Lisa, my wife, is incredibly patient. That I just pick up a different guitar that appeals to me, and it sounds very self-involved, and I guess it is, but there's different stories in every guitar. Each guitar makes you play it a little differently, and I have 3 or 4 Les Pauls, and they're all a little different, and they all send you in different directions, and then you put up your antenna like Keith Richards says, and you see what you catch that day.
Got it. Okay, listen, we talked about the fact that we're boomers, but I believe age is a number, and I think you would agree, Tom, but the industry is going to have their kind of standards, and we have to break the mold, whatever we're doing. And that's, I think, the message for our listeners is you've got a dream, you've got the inspiration, do it. You know what? If people dig it, they dig it. And if they don't, they don't. But you put it out there, and Tom's putting it out there. So why don't we finish up, Tom, with one, what's next for Heathcote Hill? Where can people find you and your music? And then we're going to play a tune to go out called Some Things in Life. So talk to us about those three things. Where are you going? And talk to us about Some Things in Life and what's next for you guys.
We are recording more music. We got great airplay with this last EP in the spring. We're going to go back out in the fall, and hopefully the people who liked us will like us some more, and we'll make more friends, and more people will hear our music. And we're just going to keep making it till people can't stand it anymore.
And where can everybody find you and Heathcote Hill? What's the best place?
Instagram, Heathcote Hill, Heathcote_Hill.
iTunes,
Instagram.
right?
We're all over iTunes, Spotify. We're up around 4,000 followers. We've got 500.
Website?
Website is heathcotehill.net. Please join our email list and check. And we're everywhere. Heathcote Hill is pretty clean. If you go there, you'll find us or a New Zealand condominium association.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Tom, thank you so much for being on Guys Radio. Thank you for your friendship and for working with you. You're a terrific guy, and you're a great creative, and I love the music, and you're a sweet guitar player. I got to tell you, I know Clapton's one of your influences, and you play. I'm not saying you're Clapton, but you have a style that's similar, and you're getting better and better and better. So everybody, Heathcote Hill, check them out. And here's the song we're going to play now. It's called Some Things in Life. Thank you, Tom.
We can win, we can lose, and life can get so damn confused that we don't know what to do. do. We could live, we could die, we could save our souls and lose our minds, but that is no excuse. But now that we're stranded here and we're standing all alone, oh, what else can we do? Looks like this comes down to me and you. 'Cause now that we're out of time and I never leaving you, oh, what else can we do? Looks like this comes down to me and you. And some things in life we don't get to. Some things in life we don't get to. Some things in life we don't get to choose. What else can we do?
All right, Guys Radio. We had interviews with two guys today. One is a man's man, Paco Chierici, the fighter pilot novelist, and then we had Tom Nelson, the creative force behind Heathcote Hill, the Americana band that's rising. You can check Tom's music out on iTunes, of course, and Paco's book is called Lions of the Sky. And I think what we learned today is that there's a lot of dimensions to being a man today, and there's a lot of cool things that a man can do today. And I've always said that it's never been a better time to be a guy than right now, because if you're a guy's guy, if you have those qualities, the casual confidence, the unassuming strength, the integrity, like a seductive type of integrity, which is in such demand and rare supply today, the emotional intelligence and the timeless style, and your fun, you can have a great time. And women are looking for men to be men in the best sense of the word. So be a guy's guy. So great show, really fantastic guests. As you know, the show started with the source material of my novel, The Guy's Guide to Love, about two guys in advertising competing for love, sex, power, and money. And it's really a sneak peek, a little peek under the tent, if you will, into the world of men for women. And guys seem to dig the book, and women seem to dig the book also. So I hope you'll check it out. You can pick it up on Amazon, The Guy's Guide to Love, Robert Manni, M-A-N-N-I. Also, my blog is on my website, robertmanni.com. I've done over 300 blog posts on everything from my trip to Korea to my smoothies that I make, to my process of elimination diet, to all kinds of stuff about business, life, love, the pursuit of happiness. Also, the show, Guys Radio, we're on KCA, of course, every Wednesday evening, 8 p.m. Pacific. They usually replay the show on Sundays at 2 p.m. Pacific time. We're on 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. We're on iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes / Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, Blog Talk Radio, Castbox. You can stream it at kca.com or robertmanni.com. Guys Radio, the place where men and women can be at their best. Everyone wins. I'm so appreciative of my listeners. We have more and more great guests coming on the show. We're booked right through the middle of fall, and it's going to be fantastic. So I picked out a lot of people who I think are going to have fresh perspectives, things to learn about men, women, everything to help our experience and to help us live our best lives. So Guys Radio, thanks for your support. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, remember, like I always like to say, guys, finish first.